So thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to tech support. Can we just give a big round of applause to our tech support for struggling with the mysteries of Google? Thank you, Rita. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Craig. And thank you to the amazing organizers of this really amazing meeting. I think so many of us have come with so much, what can you say, just existential grief and concern and gratitude, I must say, that we have this incredible family and community to face the future together. And the subject of this talk is the fact that we are the ones we've been waiting for. And I think we all know that. The powers that be would rather we just go quietly into the night, into our graves, and take the world with us. And we're not going to do that. So this talk has been developed, I would say, over at least the last 20 years that I've been responding to this. Hey, Nick Cruz and Rome. All right. Wow. From RBN. Can we give a big welcome to RBN? Thank you for being the real press as opposed to the press, which is mostly what we're facing most of the time. So we're really so grateful for our larger family, for those who are standing up against empire and oligarchy and endless war and genocide. And, we have a big job to do and we need each other very much to do it. And we have the capacity to do it. And that's really what this talk is about. So I used a little cheat sheet called PowerPoint slides because it lets you just crunch a lot of stuff in there. And if it goes too fast, I'm really happy to just send you the slides, which have references on them and captions and stuff like that, because we all need all the tools, we can get to fight this battle. So let's see. Can you get the? All right, you're working on that. All right, but we'll get going. In hopes that we can get PowerPoint up. We'll see. All right. Well, we'll just we'll carry on. Well, there we go. Okay, great. And if you can possibly open that up, that would be great. But don't worry if you can't. I think you can at least see what I'm talking about. And if you want it, the PowerPoint is yours, so you can explore it all you want. But, the title of this conference is The Uprising for People, Planet, and Peace. And that's really what this is about. That's what we are about. And this talk is to basically help remind all of us that we are the ones we've been waiting for, in spite of the naysayers and the attack dogs that are assigned to keep track of us and try to keep us down and to smear and disparage us and attempt to criminalize and vilify us, and this is happening more and more. So these are some of the ways to push back against that. And the bottom line right now is that we, the Green Party, we are the leading national anti-genocide, pro-worker, anti-fascist, people-powered political party. So give yourselves a big thank you for that. And we are leading the charge for a people-powered world at a time when the need for transformation has never been so dire, and the power to actually achieve that change has never been so close at hand in so many ways. And I will show you some of the factoids behind that. But I want to start with a quote, which is the next slide, if you can jump to it. So let's see, go back one, if you can. Yeah, so you may recognize this quote: "The old world is dying and the new world struggles to be born. Now is the time of monsters." And what we as Greens add is that what's next is up to us. It's not defined. It's a time of incredible potential for better and for worse. And you can go to the next slide. Okay. All right. I'll give you a moment. But what are those? And so, do people know who that quote is? Yeah. Gramsci. Yeah. Yeah. And, he was in jail jailed by the fascist Italian government. And he was between two world wars, which may be exactly where we are. We're beyond one and perhaps at the next, who knows? But what are those monsters? They are war, fascism, the rule of billionaires, planetary destruction. And what's next is up to us. And our agenda is the opposite. Can we mute that, whatever that is? An agenda for people, planet, and peace over profit. Okay, and you can go to the next slide if you can. So a word about how we got here, and you may recognize this if you follow Chris Hedges. This is an interview that he just did, featured on the Chris Hedges report, of a woman actually from Turkey who's kind of an anti-fascist author and writer. And after she published her critique of the Turkish government, she was basically driven out and really fled for her life. And you can go to the next one. Her name is Ece Telmekyaran, I think. And these are her two recent books: How to Lose a Country, 7 Steps from Democracy to Fascism, and then Nation of Strangers, How to Rebuild Home in the 21st Century. And her message is basically, you can go to the next one. Her message is basically that, and this is Hedges' spin on it, the road to fascism was constructed over many decades of neoliberal assault. And this is in the name of neoliberalism, better understood by its less sanitized name, cutthroat capitalism, is reaping its own grim harvest. And that's just a really helpful kind of unifying concept. We didn't get here by mistake, and the whole world, I think, is not getting here by mistake, because this is happening everywhere. In the same way that neoliberalism has really spread, over the last many decades, the World Bank, the IMF, et cetera. It's been this really vicious kind of predatory economy that has really just forced people down in so many ways. And wealth is more polarized now than it has ever been, especially in this country, but I think all around the world. The extremes of wealth are absolutely staggering. And this cutthroat capitalism and neoliberalism basically extract wealth from working people, deliver it to the billionaires. We now have, the world's first trillionaire and more to come, even as more and more people are really forced into poverty and homelessness and all the rest. And this is not by accident that cutthroat capitalism is all about privatization. It's all about taking public resources and delivering them into private hands. And it really demolishes social bonds and trust. And it really lends itself to a climate of fear and mistrust, which is kind of what it takes to build the fascist state. And, we've always had the makings of that here in this country. I don't think anybody here is fooled to think otherwise. We were a country founded on the genocide of Africans and founded on the genocide of indigenous Americans. What's new is that this is kind of extending now to white, middle class, working people beyond the most oppressed groups. And it's not only in this country, it's really around the world. So that's sort of a driving force here, this force of fascism that's really being driven by cutthroat capitalism. So the bottom line is that the need for change is really off the charts right now. And we see this really in every dimension of our lives, including war and peace and what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz right now, and the really incredible and terrifying reality that we are this close to nuclear war. Israel and the U.S. would love nothing better than excuses to use their nukes. And that means, Trump in particular, who has really virtually no restraints around that. He says, well, if you've got them, you're supposed to use them, right? And Israel, which actually was very close to using their hundreds of nukes, is what they have. But even back during Golda Meir's day, they were very close to actually using their nuclear weapons and had to be talked out of it by, I don't know who the U.S. president was at that time. I don't know, maybe Carter or somebody like that. Was it Johnson? Yeah. Well, at any rate, we talked Israel out of it then, but what can you talk Israel out of now? I'm not sure you can talk Israel out of anything. So we're going to come back to that. But, we have a real potential. The Middle East is lighting up right now as Israel expands its genocide from Gaza to the West Bank to Lebanon, war on Syria as well, and indeed into Iran. And, so Israel is really beyond all bounds of reason and humanity right now. You have the Iran retaliating against the Gulf states. You have Saudi Arabia seeming to make deals with Israel, but then Israel's kind of backing out, and Saudi Arabia's backing out, and Saudi Arabia's going after Yemen, and Yemen is standing up for local sovereignty, as they often have. They have stood up for the people of Palestine, and they are continuing to do that. The only ones those two countries have stood up. And, the U.S. and Israel it's a no holds barred situation, and it can very easily spin out of control. And it certainly has the makings of a regional war, if not a globalized war, and the potential to step up weapons, because as we know, the U.S. is out of missiles. So what exactly are they going to do? They've now re-engaged this war that the U.S. is absolutely incapable of fighting on conventional terms. What, they're going to send in hundreds of thousands of troops to be massacred, to be direct targets by the missiles that Iran has, which are fairly indestructible. They're underground. They can make more. It just boggles the mind what empire has brought us into. And I guess the silver lining on this very dark cloud is that this is a threat to every one of us and has the potential to mobilize everyone. And in fact, people are already mobilized and already, are vehemently opposed to this illegal and criminal war. And this war is hitting home not only in the dangers that are imposed on U.S. personnel, troops, potentially the U.S., because Iran has missiles that can completely evade U.S. so-called missile defense, and that's never discussed either. We're actually quite vulnerable right now. They too have these hypersonic missiles, and the missile defense cannot come close to defending against that. So we are actually physically at risk, not to mention that a significant exchange of nuclear weapons creates global nuclear winter, which could easily kill off billions of people because it covers the sunshine and basically creates global famine. So we are all very much at risk. And the public is completely outraged to start with. And the costs of this are incredible. Not only the cost to our budget and the fact that we don't have housing and healthcare and, education and the things that we should have, that we pay for Israel to have, but we ourselves don't have. And the fact that this military budget is escalating, not from 1 trillion up to 1.5 trillion, it's unthinkable what's going on. And the cost of oil is skyrocketing. I haven't seen what it is today. Yesterday, it was $100 a barrel. I don't know if anybody saw what it is today, but the illusion that this isn't going to hurt us and the global economy is kind of breaking down right now. So we can really expect that long anticipated economic severe crisis, a depression worse than any known in modern times, to really start unfolding now. And even if it were remedied tomorrow, that is, even if there were a peace treaty tomorrow, which there won't be, it's very hard to foresee how a peace treaty could possibly happen now. The U.S. has burned every conceivable bridge to make sure that doesn't happen. But even if that happened, it would still be months until an oil supply was back in the tankers and the tankers were moving again through the straits. So we're in for very hard times ahead. And the silver lining there, too, is that this really drives home to people the real costs of empire. The costs of empire are not only the moral cost and the cost to those other people around the world, they're also hitting home now here in the US of A in a way that will be absolutely devastating. Both parties, needless to say, are the enablers of empire and of this crisis. So this is just to say that we are at this incredible transformational moment right now, because the need for change has never been so dire, whether you're looking at foreign policy or the economy or the oppression of working people. Student debt is absolutely unchanged. Actually, I'll show some slides about this in just one moment. But the crisis is really in every dimension of our lives. You can go to the next slide. And this is just citing, we're blamed here, us and Ralph Nader. We're blamed for this rise of neo-fascism. But in fact, as others have said, it really is neoliberalism that is the creator of neo-fascism. And that was really identified by Malcolm X and MLK, who basically called out the white liberal, the so-called, liberal, as opposed to the conservative or the KKK. It's really that liberal who is pretending to be the sheep in wolf's clothing, but is the one that's got a smile and they're just waiting to devour you. You can move on to the next one. So the need for change is urgent. The power to make that change is really incredible. And that's what we easily lose sight of, because we're told over and over that we're irrelevant, that resistance is futile. It's not. You can go to the next one. And again, this is just illustrating the nature of the crisis. What you see here is the distribution of wealth over time. See that little tiny line on the bottom that's yellow? That's the bottom 50%. The bottom 50% has a little tiny line. It's like 2% of US wealth. And the blue area is actually the top 10%, I believe. Yeah, that is the top 10%. And that the bar area at the top of the blue, it's like half of the blue, that's the top 1%. So that tells you they don't like you to see that, because they don't want you to really get your hands around how incredibly outrageous, the oligarchy that we live in is, and the economy is. And this, of course, is magnified across racial lines as well. And those disparities are far worse among communities of color. Next one, please. And these are just some of the factoids. We don't need to go through them now, but these are helpful when people are telling you that, oh no, everything is fine, to point out, well, 3 billionaires have the wealth of the lower 50%. 3 people have as much as, 150 million people. It's just staggering. 66% are living paycheck to paycheck. Half of Americans are actually struggling to pay the rent or their mortgage. The lower 50% has a shortened lifespan by 7 years relative to the top 1%. So these are the incredible disparities that we live with. You can go to the next one. one man, $1 trillion. Obviously, that's the end of democracy right there. Especially a democracy where money talks, and where money is considered speech and so on. We'll come back to that next one. Student debt has not gone away. It's still here. Yeah, next one. Just going to breeze through these. On the climate, over 1 billion people are at threat of being displaced by 2050 due to environmental change and conflict and unrest. The past 11 years have all been the highest, hottest 11 years on record. We don't have time to pay attention to that because we're so busy trying to figure out, how to get food on the table and how not to get shot up by ICE or the police that are coming to their aid. Next one, please. This is just global mean temperature over the last, 20, 30 years. I can't quite see it from here, but it's still going up. And the Democrats who pretend to be doing things about it actually are not doing things. They took credit for the Green New Deal, made it their own, and then buried it. Next one. Colorado River is drying up. Next one. Half of our fruits and vegetables in this country are coming from the Colorado River. Next one. On the military front, we have 750 bases, at least, in 80 countries. There are only like 95 countries in the world. So it's like the whole world has US bases. You can go to the next one. We have launched a mere 251 military interventions since 1991. That's from the Congressional Research Service. So not exactly a radical think tank. And 469 since 1798. So this is what we do. Next one. So remember, we got bases everywhere, but the only countries that want to have, where the people say they want to have bases, are Poland, Israel, South Korea, and Puerto Rico. Those are the only countries in which, yeah. Yeah, it may actually only be one country when you come down to it. It may only be Israel, in fact. Next one. If you can see that little circle on the right, the brown is the number of countries that support Iran in the U.S. assault on Iran. It's about almost twice as many countries support Iran. The blue is the number of countries who say they support the U.S. But that's really just their leadership. At any rate, it's not the people. This is the leadership. If you actually talk to the people, they want absolutely none of this. Next one. Yeah. So these are the prime directives that I'm sure you're familiar with from Frederick Douglass. Power concedes nothing without a demand. From Alice Walker, the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing they have it to start with. And from Malcolm, we're not outnumbered, we're just out-organized. So I think we organize better when we're not distracted by the propaganda that tells us that we're powerless and that resistance is futile. That is propaganda. And if you know that in your bones, you're just going to be much more effective as you go about organizing. Next one. So, to our credit, we emerged as the #1 people-powered party in 2024. And those are the numbers to prove it. And when I say people-powered, I mean campaigns that were not taking either corporate money or billionaire money or working with super PACs. And people always talk about corporate PACs. They don't talk about super PACs. It's actually super PACs that far outweigh what comes in through corporate PACs. And so when the Democrats pledge that they're not going to take corporate PAC money, don't be fooled. That has nothing to do with it, because they're still using the infrastructure of the Democratic Party, which is supported by the billionaires, and their money is coming in by the millions, tens of millions, even hundreds of millions. So they are corporate powered. We are not. We don't have an army of lawyers, devising special systems for capturing billionaire money. and fooling the FEC into thinking that that's legitimate. So we got over 871,000 votes, which was 5 times as many as PSL got and 10 times as many as the Justice Party and Cornell and Melina Abdullah. They shared our agenda very much. But we've been around for a while. We have an infrastructure. We're familiar with fighting these battles to get on the ballot. So at any rate, it's fairly indisputable that we are the number one people-powered political party right now. We can claim that. And that is why the Democrats are really doubling down now to take Butch Ware off the ballot. They could not afford to have him running, especially with what he would be saying and what he did say in the debates and the forums that took place early in his campaign. It was a real heads up that they had a lot to worry about. And they do have a lot to worry about. And we're not going to give them a reason to stop worrying about that. We're going to keep that. You can go on to the next one. Woo-hoo, woo-hoo. This next slide strikes terror into the heart of Democrats because they rely on the, and one comment about that last slide, you don't need to go back to it, but we came out number one, though and we actually doubled our vote over 4 years ago, which is also a tribute to everybody here. But the vote was less than it was, 4 years before that. And why did that happen? That happened because the Democrats hired an army of lawyers. They proudly announced that to throw us off the ballot and to exhaust our resources trying to defend our ballot access. They had a war room just on that war room in order to smear us and disparage and vilify us and try to criminalize us with basically lies and misinformation. That's what their war room was. They spent 10 times as much as our entire campaign spent on everything just to be smearing us. So it's pretty amazing. And then they publicly hired, they advertised in order to hire managers for infiltrators and spies into our campaigns. So they were infiltrating us, they were spying, they were tailoring their smears and their disinformation to what they were finding out. And even with all that, we still doubled our vote over the last time. So again, a credit to everyone. And one of their smears and disinformation is this notion that Greens can never win. We can never win. Why keep doing that? Because we carry some kind of cosmic curse or something. We can never win. We can't. But because they spend so much money, absolutely. So this is the disproof to that curse, because in the UK, now correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure they too are using first past the post. So even in spite of that, they broke through the system. So we can also break through the system. Don't take no for an answer. Next slide, please. And yeah, these next ones, we're just going to run through quickly. I'm not going to give you time to really absorb them. But you see the big orange bar, the system needs major overhaul. And the red is the system needs to be torn down. So altogether, that's about 80% of the American public say major overhauls or tear it down. And minor changes, it's less than 20%. So we are winning here in the court of public opinion. And you see this in poll after poll. Next one, please. 6 out of 10 disapprove of Trump in Iran. People know that. Every poll is showing that. Next one. Uh, his approval reaches new lows. Every poll continues to show this, with disapproval about twice as much as approval. Next one. This is over time. They really don't want you to see this graph. And in fact, they don't release this as a graph. You have to construct it as a graph in order to see it. They want you to get lost in the charts of the numbers. But if you plot the graph, you can actually see what's going on. So the blue line is the unfavorables, and time is coming this way on the horizontal line. So coming closer this way, it's over, I don't know, the past 20 years, something like that. The blue line is disapproval of the Democratic Party. So you can see it started, where was it, like 50%? Now it's up at, I can't quite see it from here, it's like 60-some%. So it's markedly going up, whereas the kind of brownish line is the favorable. Favorable is dropping off a cliff and really staying down. And look at that gap. It's just tremendous. They do not want you to see that. That's the Democratic Party. And then, that's in spite of the era of Trump. And same is true for Republicans, though they're not quite as reviled as the Democrats. And that's no surprise, because what did Obama bring us? He brought us the housing crisis and the Wall Street bailouts and the massive mortgage emergency. And yeah, drones and so much else. What's that? Yeah. Next one. This shows the desire of the public for a third party. That's the green line, which has gone up over since like 2003, or the last couple of decades, markedly up from 42% to 62%. Whereas those who say, oh, it's okay, we don't need a third party, these two parties are doing just fine, that's just been declining from 55 down to 30. So the trends are really very well established. As the Democrats adopted, the big money fundraising strategies of the Republicans, and then became even better at doing it and better at selling out. Next one. And this, again, makes the same point. The dotted line is the numbers of people who say they are independents. It's like up to 45%. The numbers who say they identify as Democrats or Republican is down to 27. They don't want you to see this either, because when you lay it out, it's really clear. This is why they have to keep Greens away from the microphone, because people are hungry for what we are offering. And we are offering because we have the liberty to offer. Nobody owns us. We're not bought and paid for. We can offer the housing and the rent control and the social housing and healthcare as a human right for everyone, and slashing the military budget and getting rid of the nuclear weapons and doing all those things that the American public and people all over the world really want. Next one. And along with that, as mentioned earlier, this is global perception of the U.S. That's the blue line. So we have crossed over with China and Russia, and we're at the bottom of the heap right now. Next one. So, it's also a good time for building alliances. And we're going to come back to that. This again is, this is just different countries. Oops, you can go back to, if you can. We won't spend a lot of time, but this shows the countries that have the highest favorability and the bottom 5. U.S. is 5th from the lowest. Israel is the lowest of all. Next one. The point here, this isn't happening by chance. This is because the Democratic Party, like the Republicans, are sold out. They are wholly owned corporate subsidiaries. And now it is the Democrats. Well, we'll come to that in a second. The point of this slide here is that dark money is now at like the $2 billion point in federal races in the last election in 2024. So dark money, which means you can't trace it. You can't say who's funding it. And you also can't, let's see, sometimes you can say how much they gave, but if it's dark, it's anonymous. So you don't know who they are, who owns them. the candidate. You don't know who owns them or who owns the party. But you know what? What difference does it make who owns them? We don't need our politics to be owned by billionaires, period. Disclosure is not the solution. Next one, please. This was an expose in the New York Times. You see that little line there? It wasn't the headline. The headline is something about how dark money, it's covered up at the moment, but it's about how the money game is being played now. But the headline is buried. You know, they're burying the line here, which there it is. How Democrats are embracing dark money, but they're not just embracing it, they are leading the pack on dark money. There are more than one kinds of big money. There's dark money, and then there's super PAC money, which may be dark or it may not be dark. We don't need to go into the details here. But the point is, that's not the whole thing, but it's a big chunk of it, and it's an increasingly big chunk. The Democrats are running that show, the dark money show. Next one. And here's an example. The DCCC. Who are they? Who's buying them? Palantir and SpaceX. You know, so is it any wonder that the Democrats are all behind AI and data centers, and they will not allow us, whether at our communities or at the state or the federal level, they will not allow us to control this force that's threatening our health, our welfare, and even our survival. Next one. Yeah, so this is just an example of where that super PAC money, this is why the Democrats are not the solution. And they will keep telling you over and over that they are, and we should just get lost. But they are funded by these same dark forces, and they will continue to crush reforms from within. They're not going to stop doing that, even if a good guy DSA candidate can sneak through here and there. Number one, most of them are going to get turned back because the big money, and then it's not only the big money, it's then how they then get primaried, they get denied power once they're into office. They will not have important committee appointments and so on. So they will be powerless once they get in, unless you play the game. And that's the other side of it, like AOC, who exemplifies how you play the game. And she, during our race, AOC became the lead attack dog for the Democrats against us in a way that was just so pathetic. It was really incredible. So yeah, that's kind of like the question of the hour. Won't DSA save the Democratic Party, and won't they save us? And they won't, for all those reasons that we just went through. Their leadership, the leadership of the DSA, has already endorsed Hakeem Jeffries, and in AOC and Mamdani have both endorsed Hakeem Jeffries. And in fact, Mamdani discouraged his own campaign manager, who was running a very viable primary against Jeffries. Mamdani basically told him to drop out and not challenge Jeffries at all. So you get Mamdani kind of following in the footsteps of Barack Obama, and kind of playing the game on the inside, which is sad. He has also not spoken out for either of the two Columbia graduate students, Mahmoud Khalil and Mohsen, I forget his last name, but the Buddhist who lives in Vermont, who is a grad student. But they both were out of jail and out of detention, and then they both had their decisions reversed. So they're both very much at risk for being either deported or incarcerated again. And Mamdani has not spoken out, even though they are both in New York City. So the DSA is not going to save us. They are really the latest excuse for sheepdogging people back into the Democratic Party and trying to squash a people's rebellion at a time that we're really picking up momentum by emerging as the number one people-powered party. All the issues that they adopt and that they strut with great pride are basically our issues that they've hijacked, including the genocide opposition to the genocide, which they, their party was silent on, and we didn't hear anything from them while we sort of blazed that trail. Now they're adopting it as if it's always been their issue, and in the same way that they did to the Green New Deal, and then basically buried it. Likewise, student debt. We were ridiculed for arguing that student debt should be forgiven. It is the best public investment we can possibly make, and that public higher education should be free. So, Medicare for all. It was Ralph Nader who brought that to the public forum. Thank you, Ralph. So every time someone associates you with Ralph Nader and accuses you of being a spoiler, I'm so grateful. And I feel like that's just the highest compliment. People make my day. And, it's really important to turn that weapon around and consider it a badge of honor. We are not spoiling this very spoiled system, which is what Nader always said. But I think right now we have the numbers really to show that we are so excluded from public dialogue and conversation. Butch and I appeared on the Breakfast Club, and if you read the comments on the Breakfast Club, they were completely off the chart, that people were not only going to vote for us, they were going out to register green. And that put the absolute fear of God into the Democrats, and they really doubled down to silence us. And that is what they are trying to do right now. So it's clear where the power lies. And our role here is to follow the advice of Frederick Douglass and to continue challenging power in making demand and not taking seriously or giving the time of day to those who criticize us for standing up to illegitimate power. And the next one, Alice Walker. One of the biggest ways people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with. We have it. We're going to use it. Next one. We're not outnumbered. We're out organized. And that's why we're here, which is to get organized, because we are unstoppable together. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jill. So I don't know if we want to take one or two questions, and then we have another forum, which is going to begin momentarily. Shall we do just a handful? And then in the back. Yes. All right, go ahead.
So I have a strategic question. Could water become the defining issue that unites the Green Party and ultimately the nation? Not just in. So I just want to give a little bit of, spin on this. So not just an environment issue, but it's a public health, a food security, economic, and a peace issue. So communities across the United States already lack reliable access to clean drinking water. And at the same time, our water resources are under increasing pressure because of hyperscale data centers, agricultural runoff, and aging infrastructure and climate change. Bill Gates recently warned that access to fresh water will only become scarcer while, researchers project AI could dramatically increase the global freshwater demand. So I want to say the Green Party has been, of course, ahead of the curve before. And many of our ideas, including, of course, the Green New Deal, later, entered the mainstream political conversation and hijacked. But at the same time, organizations like the DSA have chosen that strategy of working within the Democratic Party, allowing, their dirty hands to kind of move left and say now free Palestine. So as Greens and possibly eco-socialists, some of us, our roles should be different. So, water naturally embodies people, the planet. And for peace, it connects every community, every farm, every ecosystem, every business, and every living human being. So my question is, could the Green Party organize nationally around water and it be our next defining issue, one that kind of distinguishes us politically while bringing together environmentalists, labor, farmers, public health advocates, and communities around a shared mission?
Woo! And yeah, say what you're say. Yeah, and say your name. Woo-hoo! Introduce yourself. Yeah. Introduce yourself.
Dead.
No,
Okay.
there you are.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're here. So, hello everyone. My name is Ngornan Young. I'm running for state senate in District 39 in the great state of Minnesota. So, pleasure to see everyone. Just wanted to ask that question because I think we can really unify around that. And pleasure.
I'm only going to say that we would be right in sync with our Indigenous brothers and sisters. Minnewakanee, water is life. So, absolutely. What's that? Yeah, in the back.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I believe that one of the biggest lessons that we have learned from the Democratic Party in the most recent years of elections is that negative politics does not work. We cannot just simply point out the flaws of our enemies. We have to provide a positive solution that has actionable steps. One of the most interesting slides that you showed in this presentation to me was the one that showed it was about 60% of people believe that we need major changes and about 14% of people believe that we need to burn it all down. That was the highest amount that I've ever seen respond to that sort of question. And I think that's really relevant, especially given that we know from studies that if even 3.5% of a population engages in active violent resistance, then that population is almost certainly going to be successful in that resistance. So given all that, I guess my question is, what actually is the positive policies? I just think we heard an amazing, great one that we could rally all around. But in terms of like actually advocating for and acting in support of new African and Indigenous sovereignty and nationalism in this country to burn it all down, what are the policies that we can actually take and actually act on? I do believe that water policy would be a great one, especially because of the data centers.
Absolutely. So you're asking specifically with reference to Indigenous people in this country?
I'm asking in reference to this country and the future. So obviously that would be
entirely
people and this country. Yes.
Yes.
It's not possible without.
Right. So both for the sake of Indigenous people in this country and Indigenous people everywhere, we need an agenda of justice, a people-powered agenda that puts people, planet, and peace over profit. We need to decorporatize. We need to end cutthroat capitalism and begin to actually serve people. And, so what are the specifics there? There are so many ways in which Indigenous people continue to be, raked over the coals, everything from healthcare to continuing displacement to exploitation of their resources and their lands. We need basically land back for Indigenous people. And we need to uphold, aside from that, we need to uphold our commitments of healthcare and education and social services and support and respect and dignity and acknowledgement of national and tribal status for Indigenous people who are basically disappeared, identified with Palestinians and very much charting the course by which Palestinians have also been essentially disappeared as people. So these principles of justice need to be upheld here at home, likewise around the world. And it's at the point now where the extremely predatory, cutthroat capitalist agenda that compels our economic policy and our foreign policy and the full spectrum dominance, which is, our attitude towards the rest of the world, it has really brought us to the brink of nuclear catastrophe right now and a war that we cannot end. We're in an incredible, escalating, extremely dangerous war right now in the Middle East. Likewise, in in the proxy war against Russia in Ukraine. We're at an impossible crescendo in that war now as well. And Europe has been buying in whole hog into that. And, Russia is being droned and bombed right now and really provoked. They have nuclear weapons and they're going to be pushed into using them, I fear. And there are many, experts out there from John Mersheimer to Jeffrey Sachs, who will say as much, and all sorts of military authorities. There was, God, what's his name? I'm not remembering his name, but there was a guy on a podcast that I heard the other night who was there during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He's now 96 years old. Jack Matlock. I don't know if anybody remembers his name, but he was like he was a young diplomat in the 1960s, and he's still around to talk about it, and incredibly lucid and wise and compelling. And he was saying, no, we should not be expanding up against Russia's borders. We promised we would not do that, and that was the understanding at the time. We are now provoking a nuclear power. People never would have done that at the time of the Cold War. But we've all been propagandized into this amnesia, goes with insomnia. We've been educated into thinking that nuclear war is no big deal. What are a few nuclear weapons? Well, it's enough to kill us all off. So at any rate, nuclear weapons are a great equalizer, and the world is being equalized. We've sort of re-entered the state of war that much of the West has known for centuries. If you go back to the the English and French wars in the 1500s, and after that, the 100 Years' War and the 30 Years' War, it's like half the population would be killed off. And part of that was from famine and just looting and just depravity. We're sort of undoing whatever progress was made, in international law and human rights. That is being undone. And who's leading the charge there? It is the US of A, leading the charge against international law and human rights and nuclear weapons treaties as well. So all of this really just underscores what a great equalizer war is, what a great equalizer the climate is. Of course, marginalized communities are still hit first and worst, but everybody's piling in, in line here. And it's a great time for us to be mobilizing together and really creating an unstoppable coalition to put people, planet, and peace over profit for once and for all. One more question, and then
we're going right to the chat because we're way pushed on time.
We are.
5 minutes.
Great.
We're going to go Amy in the chat.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Stein, I'm just curious. I hate to keep chewing over the same old bones, but I would love it if you could tell me whether you have a transcription available anywhere of that speech you gave at the Russia Today gathering that Democrats still can't let go of 11 years later. It would just be a really valuable resource to have. If anybody has that, could you link to it? Thanks.
Great. Okay, thank you. And I will say that speech was posted online for about 15 years. No, I'm sorry. It wasn't that long. It was like 5 years, whatever it was, until RT got taken down. But it was public information. Everything that they came after me for was public information and was completely legitimate. And the Senate Intelligence Committee spent 3 years examining every detail of what went on in my trip to Russia and found absolutely nothing. Had they found anything, do you think I would be walking free right now? No, I would be in jail for 15 years. I was completely exonerated by that. And the Democrats, the fact that they resort to that nonsense is just an indicator that they have absolutely nothing to stand on. Thank you for the question. That's right. And what was it that I went to Russia to talk about? Our presidential agenda, which was eliminating nuclear weapons, a global Green New Deal, And what was the third one? I'm not remembering offhand, but it was, that's right. It was a peace offensive in the Middle East, peace in the Middle East. And this is what they're trying to make into some kind of, betrayal of the national cause. It's nonsense. I wouldn't pay attention to what the Democrats are doing and saying. It's just a reflection of their own desperation. We need to be talking to the people who are hurting for healthcare and education and housing. I'd say forget the naysayers.
Thank you. Jill, we're going to move on to the next portion of the panel.
Great. So big thank you to everyone. Let's just keep up the work. Thank you.